I am currently on a test drive on my 1980 Yamaha XS 1100. I've been trying to diagnose a low RPM running issue, and it turns out that it is an electrical issue. I've now had it cut out on 2 cylinders, and I was about 30 miles from home when that happened, and it's able to go with traffic still, but I'm praying that I don't stall on the way home. I'll keep you guys informed on the progress.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Thankfully, I was able to ride the bike the rest of the way home and get back to the house. I didn't have to have it towed. But things like this happen sometimes with the classic bikes, and that's why I'm a firm believer that owning a classic bike isn't for everybody. I know a lot of you guys out there are like me and you love the classic bikes. I have a soft spot in my heart for the classic bikes, and I've got quite a few of them in the garage, and I like to restore them and get them back to their original condition, and maybe even better than that. And then sometimes I sell them and move them on, and sometimes I keep them for myself for a while. For a lot of people, there's this romantic notion about what owning a classic bike is like, and when the sun is out and everything is working like it should, there's really no better place to be in my mind. I just really enjoy riding them. But the truth is, it is not all sunshine and roses when you own a classic vehicle. The reality is, if you want to own and enjoy a classic bike, you have to either A, know how to work on them and be mechanically inclined and to be able to solve problems when they come up, or B, have deep pockets and have a good, competent classic bike shop somewhere in the neighborhood. If I'm selling one of my classic bikes, I do try to educate the buyers and just let them know it's a classic bike, and they are a little bit more maintenance intensive at times than the newer machines. If you want a bike that you can just get out on and just ride all over the place and have no issues with ever, I would suggest buying a newer machine. If you're like me and you like classic bikes from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, please feel free to like and subscribe. I feature lots of great classic bike content on this channel. One reason that a lot of people buy a classic bike is simply the fact that it is cheap to purchase, and this is probably the worst reason you could possibly have to buy a classic bike. In my book, there's not really such a thing as a good, cheap classic bike. Oftentimes they need a significant amount of work to get them back on the road and fully sorted and running properly and safe to ride. Unfortunately, most people buy them and they want them on the road as cheaply as they can do it, and people end up riding an unreliable bike with poor suspension and poor brakes that really isn't safe to be riding out on the road. When I purchase classic bikes, I look at several factors. First one being cosmetics. If the bike looks like a piece of trash, it's probably been abused and neglected, and it's going to be a very expensive restoration. The second thing I look at is mileage on the bike. If you get a high mileage bike, it may run nicely as a daily driver. If it is a low mileage unit, it's going to be worth more money once you have fully restored it. It's also important to know the original mileage on the bike and have proper documentation that matches what's on the title to what's on the bike. The third thing I look at when I'm purchasing a classic bike is the mechanicals on the bike. And I'm going to use this bike as an example. When I purchased it, I realized that the front rotors were locked up, as was the rear rotor. The brakes were hanging up. And I also noticed discoloration on the front rotors. So I had to figure into the purchase price the price of replacing the front rotors, and they're expensive to do that. Oftentimes I will purchase a non-running bike, but when you do that, there are a lot of factors and a lot of items that you cannot check. You can't check the functionality of your electrical system if you buy a non-runner. You can't check the functionality of the transmission, and those are in addition to the fact that you cannot hear the bike run, and so you don't really know if the motor is healthy until you actually hear it run and hear it run as it should. I honestly have to laugh every time I read a motorcycle ad that says, ran last year, just needs a battery and the carbs cleaned. To me, that's just completely bogus. A lot of times what that's code for is the bike is sat in the garage, neglected for the last 10 years, and it's going to need a lot of work and it's going to be very expensive to fix. If you don't have experience with classic bikes, but you would like to own one, I would suggest taking a knowledgeable individual with you when you look at the bike to potentially purchase it. And if you're not mechanically inclined and looking for a project that you want to work on, I would say definitely buy a very good running example to begin with. It can easily take thousands of dollars to get a classic bike back on the road. All right, If you're in the market for a classic bike, I really hope this video gives you some things to think about. Not only would I love to see you get into classic bikes, but I would love to see you have a good experience in the process. And if you're educated and you know what to expect going into it, the chances are you're going to have a much better experience than going into it with false expectations. I'd love to know what you guys think. If you have experience with classic motorcycles and you've owned them before, or you are new to classic bikes, man, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.